What if I told you that some truths are too powerful to be shared? That the very act of explaining them could dilute their essence or even cause harm? Awakened souls know this all too well. Spiritual awakening is a deeply transformative experience, but it comes with a paradox. The more you try to share it, the more it slips through your fingers. It's not because these truths are selfishly guarded, but because they can only be understood through direct experience. And here's the kicker. Sharing them prematurely can create confusion, resistance, or even push others further away from their own path. Think about it. Have you ever tried to explain a life-changing moment to someone, only to be met with blank stares or skepticism? That's because some insights can't be put into words. They're felt, lived, and known in the silence of the heart. Awakened souls understand that the journey of consciousness is deeply personal, and rushing to share certain truths can do more harm than good. But here's the good news. By keeping these secrets, you're not withholding, you're honoring the sacredness of the process. In this video, we're diving into the 5 secrets that awakened souls know they must keep to themselves. These aren't just random ideas, they're profound insights that can transform your understanding of spirituality, connection, and freedom. But beware, what you'll learn here might challenge the way you see yourself and the world. Are you ready to uncover the wisdom that only the awakened truly understand? Let's begin. Spiritual awakening is not just a concept, it's a profound shift in how one experiences reality. It's like suddenly realizing that the world you've been living in was just a shadow of something much greater. People often describe it as waking up from a dream, where the illusions of ego and separation dissolve, leaving behind a deep sense of unity and peace. But here's the catch. This awakening is deeply personal, and no words can fully capture its essence. It's like trying to describe the taste of honey to someone who's never tasted sweetness before. You can try, but the experience itself is beyond words. The beauty of awakening lies in its transformative power. It's not about gaining something new, but about shedding layers of illusion to reveal what was always there. Imagine peeling an onion layer by layer, only to discover that at its core, there's nothing but pure presence. This process can be both liberating and unsettling, as it challenges everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world. Yet it's in this groundlessness that true freedom emerges. A freedom that transcends societal norms, fears, and limitations. One of the most fascinating aspects of awakening is how it shifts your perception of self. The you thought you were. A collection of roles, labels, and stories begins to fade. What remains is a profound sense of connection to something greater, something infinite. It's not about losing yourself, it's about finding the truth of who you really are. And while this realization is deeply fulfilling, it also comes with a challenge. How do you share something so vast and intangible with others? Here's the thing. Awakening is not a destination, but an ongoing journey. It's not about reaching a final state of enlightenment, but about embracing the unfolding of consciousness in every moment. This journey is unique for everyone, shaped by their own experiences, insights, and practices. And while it's natural to want to share this transformation with others, it's important to recognize that not everyone is ready to hear it, or even capable of understanding it. This is where the art of silence and presence becomes invaluable. The paradox of spiritual awakening is that it's both universal and deeply individual, while the essence of awakening is the same for everyone. A return to unity and truth, the path to it is as diverse as humanity itself. This is why some truths are better left unsaid, not because they lack value, but because they can only be understood through direct experience. And speaking of things better left unsaid, let's dive into the 5 secrets that awakened souls know they must keep to themselves. Now, I'm going to give you a list of 5 things that should never be shared. Pay close attention to each one. First one, the direct experience of awakening. The experience of awakening is unlike anything else. It's not a thought, a belief, or even a feeling. It's a direct experience that transcends the mind, leaving you with a profound sense of unity and clarity. Trying to explain it to someone who hasn't had this experience is like describing the color red to someone who's been blind their entire life. You can use metaphors, comparisons, and even poetry, but the essence will always remain elusive. Awakening is something that must be lived, not taught, and this is why sharing it often leads to misunderstanding or even resistance. When people try to articulate their awakening, it can sometimes come across as arrogance or spiritual superiority, even if that's not the intention. Imagine telling someone, "I've seen the truth," and you haven't. Even if it's true in the context of your experience, it can create division rather than connection. Instead of trying to explain, the awakened person learns to embody their truth silently. Presence speaks louder than words, and it's through this presence that others may begin to sense the possibility of awakening within themselves. Second point, practices and methods that worked for you. Spiritual practices are deeply personal, shaped by your unique personality, life circumstances, and inner struggles. What worked for you might not work for someone else, and that's okay. For instance, meditation might have been your gateway to awakening, but for someone else, it could feel like a frustrating chore. Sharing your methods can unintentionally lead others to believe there's a right way to awaken, which can create unnecessary pressure or even discourage them from finding their own path. Instead of prescribing methods, it's more helpful to encourage exploration. Awakening is not about rigid techniques, but about discovering what resonates with your inner being. For some, it might be sitting in silence. For others, it could be walking in nature or journaling their thoughts. The key is to remind others that the path is theirs to discover, and the practices that lead to awakening are as diverse as the people who walk it. By letting go of the need to share your methods, you allow others the freedom to find their own. Third point, your perceptions about others. Awakening often brings a heightened sense of awareness, allowing you to see through the masks people wear, their fears, insecurities, and illusions. While this insight can feel like a superpower, it's not always wise to share it. Pointing out someone's mask or illusion, especially if they're not ready to hear it, can lead to defensiveness or even resentment. It's like trying to wake someone up from a dream they're not ready to leave. They might cling to it even harder. Growth is a deeply personal process, and everyone has their own timing. Imagine a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. If you try to help it too soon, you might harm its wings. Similarly, people need to go through their own struggles and realizations to grow. Instead of pointing out their illusions, focus on being a compassionate presence. Sometimes, simply holding space for someone is more transformative than any words you could say. Fourth thing, the experience of emptiness and groundlessness. The realization of emptiness. The understanding that everything is impermanent and interconnected can be both liberating and terrifying. For someone unprepared, this truth might feel like nihilism, a void where nothing matters. But for the awakened person, it's the opposite. It's a freedom from clinging, a peace that comes from embracing the flow of life. Sharing this insight too soon, however, can overwhelm others and even destabilize their sense of self. This is why teachings about emptiness must be approached with care. It's not about throwing someone into the deep end of the pool, but about gently guiding them to the water's edge. For example, instead of saying nothing is real, you might encourage them to observe the impermanence of their thoughts or emotions. By allowing them to discover these truths gradually, you create a space for understanding to unfold naturally, without fear or resistance. Fifth and last, the freedom from moral conventions. Awakening often reveals that societal rules and moral codes are constructs, useful, but ultimately arbitrary. True freedom comes from understanding that unity with others naturally leads to kindness and ethical behavior. Not because of external rules, but because of an inner knowing. However, sharing this insight can be risky. People might misunderstand it as a rejection of morality, associating it with chaos or selfishness, when in reality, it's the opposite. This freedom is not about breaking rules for the sake of rebellion, but about living from a place of authenticity and connection. For example, an awakened person might choose kindness not because it's expected, but because it feels like the most natural expression of unity. Explaining this to someone who hasn't experienced it, though, can lead to confusion or mistrust. Instead of talking about freedom, live it. Let your actions reflect the peace and compassion that come from awakening, and others will feel the truth of it without needing an explanation. Silence is often misunderstood as emptiness or the absence of communication. But in the realm of spirituality, silence is the most profound teacher. It's within silence that the deepest truths are revealed, not through words, but through direct experience. Imagine sitting with someone who radiates peace and presence. There's no need for explanations or lectures because their very being communicates what words cannot. This is the power of silence. It bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the heart. In a world obsessed with noise and answers, silence becomes a rare and transformative gift. Presence, on the other hand, is the living embodiment of awakening. An awakened person doesn't need to preach or convince. Their presence alone is enough to inspire transformation. Think of it like sitting near a warm fire on a cold night. You don't need to understand the science of heat to feel its comfort. Similarly, the presence of someone who has awakened creates a space of peace and clarity, allowing others to sense their own potential for awakening. It's not about doing anything. It's about being fully present. The beauty of silence and presence is that they invite others to explore their own inner world. Instead of handing someone a map, you're encouraging them to discover their own path. For example, a teacher might sit in meditation with their students, letting the silence speak louder than any words ever could. In that shared stillness, the students begin to feel the truth for themselves, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. This is why the greatest spiritual teachings often happen in moments of quiet connection. But silence and presence are not passive. They are deeply active in their subtlety. To hold space for someone in silence requires immense awareness and compassion. It means resisting the urge to fill the void with advice or solutions, and instead trusting that the other person's journey will unfold as it should. This can be challenging, especially in a culture that values action and answers. Yet, it's in this restraint that the most profound transformations occur. Ultimately, silence and presence remind us that awakening is not something to be taught, but something to be felt. Words are like fingers pointing to the moon. They can guide, but they are not the moon itself. The real teaching lies in the simplicity of being, in the quiet moments where truth reveals itself without effort. And speaking of truth, let's explore how to share these teachings with caution and care. Sharing spiritual teachings is a delicate art, one that requires sensitivity and awareness of the other person's readiness. Not everyone is prepared to hear certain truths, and forcing them can do more harm than good. Imagine planting a seed in soil that hasn't been prepared. It won't grow no matter how much you water it. Similarly, spiritual insights can only take root in someone who is genuinely curious and open. Instead of pushing ideas, it's better to wait for the right moment, when the other person's own journey leads them to ask the questions. One of the most important things to remember is that sharing isn't about proving how much you know or how far you've come. Awakening isn't a competition, and the moment it becomes about ego, the essence of the teaching is lost. For example, if someone asks about your experience, resist the urge to impress them with grand stories. Instead, focus on creating a space where they feel safe to explore their own questions. Sometimes the most powerful response is a simple, "What do you feel about this?" rather than offering an answer. Another key to sharing with caution is recognizing that everyone is already on their own path, even if it doesn't look like it. Awakening is not about fixing others, but about trusting that their consciousness will awaken in its own time. For instance, if someone is struggling with anxiety, instead of telling them they're trapped in an illusion, you might gently guide them to observe their thoughts. By encouraging observation rather than judgment, you empower them to discover their own insights without feeling overwhelmed or dismissed. It's also important to approach sharing with humility. The truth is, no one has all the answers, not even the most awakened person. Spirituality is a journey of discovery, not a destination, and pretending to have it all figured out can alienate others. Instead, share from a place of vulnerability and authenticity. For example, you might say, "This is what I've experienced, but it might not be the same for you." This openness invites connection rather than resistance, allowing others to feel seen and respected. Ultimately, sharing spiritual teachings is less about words and more about presence. People are drawn to authenticity, not lectures. When you embody the peace and freedom of awakening, others will naturally be curious about what you've found, and when they are ready, they will ask. Until then, trust the process and focus on living your truth. And speaking of living your truth, let's explore why it's more powerful to embody awakening than to explain it. Awakening is not something to be worn like a badge or displayed for others to admire. It's a way of being, a quiet transformation that radiates from within. The most profound spiritual teachings come not from words, but from the way you live your life. Imagine meeting someone who exudes kindness, peace, and authenticity. They don't need to tell you they're awakened. Their presence says it all. This is the essence of living, the awakening, letting your actions speak louder than any explanation ever could. When you try to explain awakening, it often turns into a mental exercise, reducing something infinite into something finite. Words can only point to the truth, they can't contain it. It's like trying to capture the vastness of the ocean in a single cup of water. Instead of explaining, focus on embodying the qualities of awakening: compassion, presence, and simplicity. For example, when faced with conflict, respond with understanding rather than defensiveness. These small, everyday actions create ripples that inspire others far more than any lecture. Living the awakening also means embracing the ordinary moments of life with extraordinary awareness. Washing dishes, walking in nature, or even sitting in silence becomes a sacred act when done with presence. This doesn't mean you have to withdraw from the world or live in isolation. On the contrary, it's about engaging with life fully, seeing the divine in the mundane. When others see you finding joy and peace in the simplest things, they'll naturally wonder what's different about you. Another reason to live the awakening rather than explain it is that it removes the pressure to convince others. Awakening is not about being right or proving a point. It's about being free. When you stop trying to explain or justify your experience, you create space for others to explore their own path. For instance, instead of saying, "This is the truth," you might simply say, "This is what I've found." This openness invites curiosity rather than resistance, allowing others to discover their own insights. Ultimately, living the awakening is about trusting the natural unfolding of consciousness. Everyone is already on their journey, whether they realize it or not. By embodying the peace and unity of awakening, you become a silent reminder of what's possible. And as you live your truth, you'll find that the need to explain fades away, replaced by a quiet confidence in the process. Now, let's take a step back and look at how all these pieces come together in the bigger picture of spiritual growth. So, now that you've uncovered these 5 secrets, the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you rush to share it, or will you let it transform you from within? Awakening isn't about convincing others or proving how much you know. It's about living your truth and trusting that your presence alone can inspire change. Think about it. How would your life look if you stopped trying to explain and started embodying the peace, freedom, and unity that awakening brings? What if your silence spoke louder than words? The real challenge lies in applying this wisdom to your daily life. Can you let go of the need to fix others and instead trust their journey? Can you embrace the simplicity of being, even when the world demands explanations? These aren't easy questions, but they're the ones that lead to true transformation. And here's the thing. When you live the awakening, you become a beacon for others, not by what you say, but by who you are. Are you ready to take that step? If this video resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need it. And if you're ready to dive deeper into these topics, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Together, we can continue exploring the path of awakening, one insight at a time. Now, it's your turn. What's one thing you'll take from this and apply to your life today? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.